One. Good morning, everyone. If you could take your seats, it would be greatly appreciated. I think we're ready to kick off. Yeah, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Melbourne, home of the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung people. I'd like to begin by formally acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands on which we're meeting today, and for the next 3 days. We are on Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung country. We do have a traditional owner joining us very shortly to give us a formal welcome to country, but I would like to pay our respects to elders past, present, and to emerging leaders. My name's Taylor Hunt. I'm a Fisheries Manager with the Victorian Fisheries Authority. I'm a keen recreational fisher and I'm delighted to be your MC for this event. We've got an amazing few days ahead of us. It's just wonderful to be back after COVID. We had a fantastic welcome ceremony last night and a few cocktails. There's a few sore heads. Patrick's nodding his head. Awesome to see so many colleagues and friends, and the next few days are just going to be absolutely fantastic. Quick reminder, we'll do some more housekeeping shortly, but could you just make sure your phones are on silent so we don't have any interruptions during the important speeches? And it's going to be an amazing few days. So before I go any further, I would like to now introduce the Honourable Sonya Kilkenny, Minister for Outdoor Recreation and Minister for Planning for the Victorian Government, to officially welcome you to the 10th World Recreational Fishing Conference.
Thanks very much, Taylor, and good morning, everyone. I understand that Perry Wandin will be here. He's a traditional owner. He will do the formal welcome to country. But I do want to acknowledge we are standing on the beautiful lands of the Wurundjeri people, and I pay my respects to elders past and present. And I'm very proud that Victoria is the first state in the nation to be advancing a path to treaty and truth and enacting the Uluru Statement from the Heart. Could I also acknowledge, please, Travis Dowling, the CEO of the Victorian Fisheries Authority, Gail Owen, the Chair of the VFA, Rob Mitchell, MP, the Federal Member for McEwen, who will be joining you all from tomorrow, the Honourable Bob Baldwin, Chair, Australian Fishing Trade Association, Rob Loates, Chair of VR Fish, and almost 350 recreational fisheries managers, scientists, academics from across Australia and beyond, I understand including from Mongolia, Belize, Belgium, Italy and the Bahamas. It is so wonderful to see so many people here today, and I have to say when I walked in, just the buzz and the atmosphere was fantastic. It is wonderful to be here in person with you all. On behalf of the Victorian Government, the Victorian Fisheries Authority, the Fisheries Research Development Corporation, the Melbourne Convention Bureau and all of our partners, welcome to the 10th World Recreational Fishing Conference. We are absolutely delighted to be hosting this World Recreational Fishing Conference here in Melbourne, Victoria, Australia. We believe that Victoria is one of the most progressive recreational fishing jurisdictions in the world, and Melbourne is the perfect city to be hosting this absolutely amazing event. I know you are going to love it over the next 3 days. The Andrews Labor government recognises the incredible health, well-being, social and economic benefits that the recreational fishing provides to our community. We believe that managing fisheries is not only about regulating commercial fishing, but it's about growing recreational fishing as a core responsibility so the community can truly receive these benefits. We know what they all are: getting out in the great outdoors, the mental health benefits of being in nature, bringing families together, regional economy and fishing tourism, in fact, generating here in Victoria more than $7 billion and more than 14,000 direct jobs. and of course recreational fishers as environmental stewards. I'd also like to give a shout out to the more and more women who are taking up recreational fishing across Victoria, and I look forward to supporting them over the years as well. Just a bit of background, it was in 2014 that our Victorian government ambitiously aimed to grow recreational fishing participation here in Victoria to over 1 million anglers in Victoria through our Target 1 Million commitment. Since then, we've invested over $81 million into recreational fishing to get more people fishing more often in more places. We've created recreational fishing havens in Port Phillip Bay, Corio Bay and Gippsland Lakes by removing commercial netting, giving back to recreational anglers, boosting tourism and creating jobs. And of course, we've got our new native fish hatchery at Arcadia, Shepparton, which will soon be the biggest native fish hatchery in Australia. We stocked a record 10 million fish per year across 13 different species, and we've rolled out the biggest upgrade and construction of boat ramps, car parks, piers, jetties and fish cleaning tables all over Victoria to provide better access. And last year, as part of our election commitment, we committed a further $96 million to improve recreational fishing and boating in Victoria. And as part of that package, I'm delighted to say it will include 60,000 little angler kits to primary school age kids in every corner of the state. We want them to learn about marine life, have fun with their families, get engaged and get involved in fishing at a really early age. And of course, we've announced $10 million to triple the size of the native fish hatchery at Arcadia near Shepparton, making Victoria fully self-sufficient for fish stocking. So the Andrews Labor government is truly proud of our support for recreational fishing in Victoria. And I'm particularly looking forward, I have to say, to hearing the results. I think they're coming out tomorrow on the National Recreational Fishing Survey, and I'm sure I will get an update on that. So finally, I'd like to acknowledge all of our partners who have helped make this conference possible, including our sponsors, the International Scientific Board and the local organising committee for the World Recreational Fishing Conference, the VFA staff who have been dedicated to organising this conference over several years, and of course all of you delegates for participating. We recognise the rich history of the World Recreational Fishing Conference and plan to carry on that tradition at this event with over 300 delegates from 20 countries participating. Hundreds of high-quality presentations are coming your way, 8 world-class keynote speakers and a really exciting social program. So thank you all for joining us here in Melbourne for the 10th World Recreational Fishing Conference. We hope you enjoy your event and your stay. I do hope that you do find time to get out there on the water and to wet a line whilst you're here down in Melbourne, whether it's for snapper, tuna, trout or Murray cod. After all, Victoria is home to Australia's best recreational fisheries. Thank you again, and I wish you every success for the conference this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Yeah, it's a really exciting time for fishing in Victoria, and this event is the pinnacle. And it's going to be a great few days. All right, next up, it's a great honour for me to introduce the next person to the stage. I think he's actually done more for recreational fishing in Victoria than anyone else. And he's a rare head of a fisheries agency that is a genuine recreational fisher. He doesn't just do it occasionally. He doesn't just do it for the photo opportunities. He's going fishing every weekend with his friends and family. He loves it and he gets it. He gets recreational fishing. And he's pretty handy at it too, especially at the moment. He just won our staff fishing competition called the Aqua Cup. And some say it was a fluke, but he's just been telling us he's just been letting everyone else win all these years. So please join with me in welcoming the CEO of the Victorian Fisheries Authority to the stage, Mr. Travis Dowling.
Thank you. Thanks, Taylor. There was another couple of pages I had there for you, mate, to read out as well, but obviously they got lost. Welcome, everyone. It is just absolutely wonderful to be here. It is fantastic to be on Wurundjeri country today, and I would also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the country that we meet on today. We meet for the next 3 days, and I'd like to pay my respects to elders past, present, emerging. Minister, that was an inspiring speech. Thank you so much. I'm going to embarrass you a little bit as we go through my presentation, but you are right now sitting in the home, I would say, the epicentre of recreational fishing in Australia and the world. It's a challenge I throw out to you to prove wrong over the next 3 days, but the government in Victoria over the last 10 years have deliberately set out to really make Victorians, Australians and the world see that this government takes recreational fishing very seriously. It's not only a great pastime to enjoy with family and friends, it is an economic stimulator for regional Victoria. It provides physical health and mental health benefits, and it is a key pastime for many, many Victorians, and we're going to touch on that target 1 million going through. But it is wonderful to be here. I'd like to really thank a couple of people just before we jump into things. I really want to thank Taylor Hunt and a shout out to everyone who's come on the journey of the World Recreational Fishing Conference. We touched on it last night, but you know, there's been hiccups with COVID and there's been challenges, but you know, the people that were in Berlin and people that were in, I think it was Rio, and then you know, we were meant to be in Rotterdam, but we're here in Melbourne, and some people that are here today might have actually been to Darwin when the World Rec Fishing Conference was last in Australia. It has a rich history, this conference, and it's really important that we continue to celebrate recreational fishing around the world. And I mean, some of the speakers we're going to see and we're going to touch on today will really show that, you know, there is just so much that's occurring in recreational fishing, and we continue to learn all the time, and we'll talk about that a bit further. I'll just run through a couple of slides here. Hopefully there's none of me fishing. But so that's who I am. Many of you met me last night. Okay. Oh, how did these go up here? Right. So that one out the side there, that's a Murray cod, and I was talking to Robson Green, and many of you will have seen Robson, who just happens to be not only a great fisher and extreme fisher, but a really lovely bloke. But we're going to try and get Robson onto a cod. Some of those are my children. That's my eldest daughter up there. That's with a trout cod, an endangered trout cod in the Goulburn River. It's my younger daughter down there. People that might know Portland go there to fish for a lot of things. We were targeting wrasse off the breakwater. And that's our board chair down there with a large brim that she caught last week. Gail, just whack your hand up. She's down the front here, and that's all of our board sitting at the front. And I'll just say, I mean, my job as the Chief Executive Officer is really made easy, and this is just a gratuitous suck up to the board. But we have all of the board here. We've got Gail, Gus, we've got Bernie, Joelle, Yorick. We have a couple that are away ill, but the support they provide to us as an authority is just incredible. So I'm just going to race through a couple of these. So again, that's my son over there on the left with a snapper, and us up there, and my lovely partner, and we tend to find ourselves getting bogged. That's my daughter up there with a thing called a barty grub. Has anyone here ever caught a barty grub? Do you know how to catch a barty grub? All right, there's a couple of hands going up. Loti will have his hand up somewhere. Well, you use barty grubs to catch Murray cod, and that's my wife down there on the left-hand side. That cod on the left that you see down the bottom there, we've caught that cod 3 times under the same snag, and we keep catching it and letting it go, and it keeps getting bigger, and it's just a wonderful experience. And then just some of the places across Victoria that you can go fishing. That's my dog there sitting at the front of the boat. It's probably not the best handling of the cod, but it's hard trying to take a selfie and show people that you're actually catching fish. Look, I said I was going to probably embarrass the minister, but it is amazing what this government has done over the last 10 years. $81 million. Now, the first on the left-hand side, that was Charlotte Pulford. So Charlotte Pulford was the first fishing minister of this government, and when she came in and really embraced recreational fishing and really got into target 1 million. And I'm going to put on something here. So we got these hats made, right? And a lot of kids, we started handing these hats out everywhere, and who's this Tim person and why are you wearing these hats? But it's hard to get kids and people growing up to wear a hat that says, I like fishing, right? Because they don't often want to wear that at nightclubs and where they're going out and doing different things, but they'll wear this Tim hat, not realising that they're actually promoting fishing. So Jola really got into fishing, and then we've got Minister Kilkenny, who's now come on board and just been such an incredible advocate. And Minister Kilkenny's electorate is Carrum, and within Carrum is the biggest boat ramp in Victoria at Patterson Lakes. And the Minister lives and breathes fishing every day because it's the epicentre of snapper and it's the epicentre of coastal fishing. And the Minister has been incredibly supportive of the next phase of recreational fishing election commitments. And she's touched on a number of them, but I'm going to run through a few. So this was the start. So basically, in the first 4 years of this government, there was removing commercial netting. Now it sounds, this whole debate about resource sharing and resource allocation, but when you've got 7 million Victorians living in a city on top of a bay, we had 43 commercial fishers, there was this real a desire to ensure that we maintain that as a really popular recreational fishery. And the buyout of the commercial netting in Port Phillip Bay in Victoria was done with respect and it was done with dignity over 8 years, and we paid out over $30 million to 40 licence holders who transitioned out over 8 years. But you're going to see from some of our speakers, the catch per unit effort from recreational fishers of King George whiting in Port Phillip Bay has tripled since the nets were removed. The availability of calamari, of snapper, there are many people in this room who fish it. It's been incredible. So we saved Lake Tolondo, a trout fishery in the western parts of Victoria. We've really got the stocking program going. We've got a trout cod fishery going, the first one in the world to be able to legally take trout cod. That hasn't worked so well, but we'll touch on that a bit more. They just haven't grown well where we put them. We got the first Victorian barramundi fishery going. And to all of my friends from Queensland and Northern Territory, we had a lot of fun sledging you guys as our barramundi grew. And then we turned the power station off and they stopped growing. But it was really exciting for a little time, and it just showed this government was willing to look at different things to get fishing going. We handed out a lot of angling club grants. We got netting removed at the mouths of Gippsland Lakes. And we created the Victorian Fisheries Statutory Authority, right? Now, it doesn't sound like a lot, having a statutory authority for fishing, but if you think about how fisheries are managed in some other parts of the country and the world, they're managed as an adjunct to an agricultural element that is only natural resource management for the sake of resource utilisation. They're not managed as a sport and recreation. They're not managed as a wealth generator that goes beyond what the value of the fish is in the market. So Victoria took the deliberate step to create a standalone authority that would manage fisheries as more than just beef, cattle, wool. They would manage fisheries as something that was going to promote engagement across Victoria. So that was a fantastic step, and 2016 the authority was established, and I think we're going pretty strong. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Okay, so come forward, and then we've got these next range of commitments. Okay, so stocking Melbourne metropolitan lakes with native fish. It's not just trout anymore, we've got natives. Phasing out commercial netting in Gippsland Lakes. We got rid of commercial netting in 2019 in the Gippsland Lakes. Right, it doesn't sound like a lot. It's a $10 million commitment, but since that time, the recovery of black bream, dusky flathead in those lakes, the prevalence of King George whiting, those that heard Lee Rayner speak at the Fishing Expo, it's testament to what's happened to those lakes. People were driving past the Gippsland Lakes, they're going to Malakuta, they were going to Wingan Inlet, they're stopping there now. It's incredible. We started stocking marine species into places like Lake Tyers. We've got created a Vic Fish Kids program, which has been running across all of our events that we do. We've got the Arcadia $7 million fish hatchery up and running. And look, 10 million fish by 2022. We've delivered that. We continue to deliver it. And look, just more and more commitments that we've gone through, which have then been, built upon as we've had each new iteration of government. So, Look, I won't go through all of the Go Fishing Victoria initiatives. The Minister has touched on them. But after every 4 years, we've had a refresh in different commitments, and we continue doing it. It's a continued commitment to growing fishing in Victoria. I do want to just reach out at this point and have a chat about our sponsors. I am going to come back to those commitments, but I'd like to acknowledge FRDC, the Queensland Government, Government of South Australia, Ozfish, VRFish, Work Network, Future Fish, Australian Trout Foundation, everyone who's contributed to today to make today happen, which has been fantastic. Okay, our International Scientific Board. Everyone whose photo's up there, can you please put your hand up? Great, excellent. You are the celebrities. You are our celebrities of the next 3 days, so try and hit up these people. So we've got people that have flown in from all around the world to be here to deliver some fascinating speeches. And I have to say the hardest thing for me was looking through the program was which room we're going to be in at different times, because it is quite incredible. So thank you for coming. And the local organising committee, I mean, I touched on some of the people that have really helped out, but Matt, Caitlin, Shay, Russell, Anthony, Terry, Corey, Taylor, Craig, Amanda, David, Lotzi, Motti, Toby, Ben, Sharpie, Belinda, Michelle, Cam, all of these people, you can see, they've worked so hard in making this conference happen. And we just, it wouldn't have happened, we wouldn't have come together, and we just pass our thanks on. Okay, so we've touched on the previous conferences. Just a bit of a show of hands. Has anyone here been to all of those? Right, okay, all right. Who's been to 2? Okay, all right, 3. A few hands there. 4. All right, okay. Okay, a couple. I'm just checking out where all the money is. Right, 5. Right, follow these guys around. Excellent. All right, so it has a rich history, and and thank you to the organising committee and to everyone who supported the conferences. All right, okay, I'm going to come back to my speech, which I've moved away from a little bit. I'd just like to say, I think it's really important for us to understand that each of the keynote themes that we've pulled together for the conference have been based upon really serious consideration of what the challenges and the opportunities are in rec fishing across Australia and across the world. And we can see basically that there are lots of opportunities as we continue to grow and continue to develop as a pastime, but there are challenges. I mean, climate change is a key challenge that's impacting upon us all. Animal welfare continues to be a challenge that will continue to be around fishing as we continue to move forward. Then we've got things like also resource sharing and resource allocation. So a lot of our keynote speakers and the themes for the conference, we'll tease these out and we'll look at ways that we can be in front of the game and we can continue to address each of these challenges as they come through. And there'll be opportunities to ask questions and to talk more about these things. Okay, so, again, going through our keynote speakers, Stan, Beth, Robson, Sascha, Steve, Ingrid, Craig and Matt, worlds of experience here and many decades of experience working across the world in fisheries. So I'm really looking forward to their speeches. All right, okay, I think we've sort of covered most of the housekeeping in relation to this stuff, but this is where like the different speakers will be at different times and different parts of the conference. So we are going to have, as Taylor touched on, we are going to have hard copies out at reception by lunchtime for everyone to be able. I know we've got a board out there, but there'll be hard copies that people can have in their packs. And also, just in terms of what in your kit, you'll have seen that there's different things that you can use and celebrate the World Red Fishing Conference. That's Caitlin with a Cracker Murray cod out of Lake Eildon. All right, I think we're moving on to our next one. But before we do, I did make a promise that we wouldn't touch on the National Rec Fishing results of the survey. Andy Moore and others have been here. It's been sponsored by FRDC. But what's happened over the last couple of years is that the Australian Government, and through the Fisheries Research Development Corporation, have done a survey into recreational fishing participation and value, right? And it really, for us in Victoria, it went a lot to target 1 million because it was looking at how many people are participating. Now, we're not allowed to talk about the numbers that have come out, but we have seen a snapshot of them. So just in preparation for that, I've just upgraded my hat, right? So we're not mentioning the numbers, right? But we're feeling pretty good in Victoria about where our investment has gone. But look, have a wonderful conference. Please do feel free to grab me at any time when you see me around. It is wonderful to see you here, and really looking forward to the next few days. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Travis. I knew he had something going on when he brought a little paper bag up and wouldn't show me what was inside. There was a gag hidden there. Thank you very much. Okay, next up, I'm really pleased to invite Perry Wandin, who's an elder from the Wurundjeri Woi Wurrung people, to provide the welcome to country. Thank you, Perry.
Good morning, everybody, and look, sorry for being caught up in the traffic. I'm hating everybody's going back to work. Why can't they just stay at home? My name's Perry Wandin, and I'm a Wurundjeri Woi Wurrung elder, and I'm here to give you a bit of a spiel on my family's family tree and history with the beautiful Yarra River or Birrung. But firstly, I'd like to acknowledge all my ancestors, elders, both past, present, and the next emerging generation, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, and good morning, Minister. How are you? As I was seeing up there before, we've probably in the last 10 years we found an eel trap. Melbourne Water out in the parks out there, up on the Yarra, they found an eel trap, and we thought they were all gone and washed away with all the floods. And the Melbourne Waterman actually cut all the blackberry back, and we're still using that as a traditional thing today. And it's a beautiful inlet, comes on a sweeping bend, and then you've got this beautiful Howell straight line. Well, you'd have probably 500-600 mil between each step, and because all the water flowed down, and then you just stand there and catch them with the eel traps that they nets, spears, the whole lot, and it went 3/4 of the way across the Yarra, and which is quite a big area because back the Yarra would be probably as wide as this over here. But with our history, all our family were taken from around Melbourne area and taken to a beautiful place, Hillsville. So if you're here for a week or so, or Hillsville Sanctuary is part of Corranderk Mission, put together in 1863 till 1924. We were down to 32, 35 men, women and children because cholera had actually just about wiped out everybody, and plus the common cold. But everybody was taken up there. Simon Wonga was the head man, Nurrungita, and along with his cousin, William Barrick, they sort of helped people to sort of being, well, locked up because once they were on the mission, they weren't allowed to move. Go off, they had to get permission if they did. By the time in 1924, there was over 424 people, but that wasn't only our mob. It was all the mobs around Victoria. Anyone that sort of come to Melbourne, and because they'd heard that there was work, they were virtually shifted up there. There were 5 other missions too, all around Victoria, and the same thing with, well, genocide, because they wanted to wipe out Aboriginal people completely. Someone put up, we've got a web page on Facebook, it's the Wandin mob, because that's where all of our people are around Victoria, and someone had a permit. They put it up on the thing, permit to kill Aboriginals. They had a permit back then, and which they did, because they were trying to wipe out all the Aboriginal people. For one, they just thought they were just useless, but we fought back. My father was the last to be born at Corranderk Mission in 1933. I said 1924, it shut down. Granny Jemima Wandin, who married my great-grandfather, still was allowed to stay on the property till then because of the people who owned it said, this is your land, you were quite welcome to stay here. And she did, like I said, till 1944, passed away at 104 years of age. So she outlived everybody that virtually was with her, who grew up when she come down from up the top there on the Murray River. And today we have been going as an organisation since 1986. As I was saying about my father being last born at Corranderk, he became our last Narangita. And he also was the first Aboriginal man to play for AFL football. Well, VFL it was back in those days, but St Kilda. So I'm a mad St Kilda supporter too, so is the rest of the family. But as I was saying, my father's been passed now for 20 years, and that's where I stepped up to become an elder. And for the history of Aboriginal people in Victoria, to see how nearly everybody was wiped out. My father married a little 5-foot English woman, and that's why I lost all my colour. But I'm quite happy to be here to stand here to tell you how I feel about my people and my family. And it's very proud because, like the fishing with that, if you ever do get to catch a blackfish or a slimy or an eel, the blackfish are the best eating fish ever. And believe me, up there in Helsel, we're still catching them. They could be up to £1 to £2, and the meat on it is so beautiful and white, and the taste of it. And of course, the crays up there as well. So we've got a good, the crays keep coming back, and the blackfish. And because we all know, redfin introduced, that would be the next, I would say, the next best. Trout, that's just rubbish. It is, sorry to say, but the trout, and of course, we had those big floods just after and before Christmas. I think someone said about $10 million of fish went in the hatcheries up there and went into the Goulburn, and everyone was up there crazy fishing. They reckon they were pulling them in left, right and centre. My partner, her son works for Tunnerong, which is the North Mob, and he's a keen fisherman, and he said they were unbelievable, the fish, because they were being brought up in the fisheries there, they didn't know how to handle anything, and he said now, it's probably been a month or so, they're starting to adapt and how to pick up, how to be normal. And he said he's trying to catch them. He said, yeah, they're a bit more elusive now. So that's a good one to talk about too, because if you're going to say about that today. But look, that's only part of my history. I welcome you from all over Australia. Welcome to Australia. Welcome to Melbourne. Welcome to the best city in Australia. Yeah. But even though we have got trouble with the Yarra River, we do know that the fish are getting better and better, and the platypus, because that's native to us, and it's a beautiful thing. And my uncle, my great uncle, he used to be able to sit there with his pole, just sit on the log, wait for the fish, and he'd tickle them. And he was just an amazing man. And everybody that we talk about, everyone goes after Uncle Frank Wandin. They said he was the fisherman of everything. So look, I hope you enjoy yourself. Sorry if I bored you. But Wamjenka, Yumin Kundibik, Wurundjeri Wurrung Bullock. And that means welcome to the land of Wurundjeri people. I do welcome you. And I hope you have a great stay, and looks like the weather's going to be kind to you too. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Perry. Thank you for sharing your story and for having us on your lands over the next 3 or 4 days. Before we go any further, we're going to do a little bit of housekeeping, just to run through a few more things, and then I will introduce our first keynote speaker. So first of all, we've tried to be an environmentally friendly conference and minimise our footprint. So most of the information that you find for the conference will be on the conference app. Many of you might have already, I'll just bring this up when we can, you might have already downloaded it from the App Store. If you haven't, it's called CVent Events. And there's a little QR code on the back of your lanyard that you can scan and download the app there. On the app, you'll find the conference program, the venue map. You can build your agenda for the next 3 days, and you can also message and connect with speakers and sponsors. So you can arrange to catch up for coffees and things like that if you need. We will be, as Travis mentioned, we will be printing the program as well. If you prefer to have hard copy, you can keep that in your bag too. If you've had a look at the program, you'll see we've got 5 or 6 concurrent sessions in separate rooms over the next 3 days. And all of the rooms are out here behind us for the presentations. For the workshops, they'll be downstairs in room G, which is the glass room. I do want to thank all of the session chairs who have volunteered over the next 3 days to keep the sessions on track and introduce the speakers. And a quick reminder to all of the speakers to make sure you go and see the AV staff through the back here to load up your talk, at least a session in advance for giving your presentation so we're all organised. We'll have morning tea, lunch and afternoon tea out in the foyer where you had coffee before. You can find the toilets around here to the left. Smoking area is outside on the concourse. And as Travis showed before, in your conference bag, you'll find a conference hat, a buff, a pen, a mug, and a notepad. And there's also an Indigenous painted stump jumper lure in there. This will catch you a Murray cod if you want to put some hooks on it. And the picture of Caitlin before, you can see the evidence. It does work. You might just like to keep it as a memento. If you're doing any social media posting, we'd love it if you could use the hashtag WRFC10. And there will be a prize for the best social media post, which is just here. Some original artwork that we've got displayed up there, so post away. You've got free public transport on your lanyard, so this will get you all over Melbourne. And if you have any issues with the public transport or need some directions, come and see us in the white polos. If you'd like to go fishing around the days of the conference, you can get a free fishing licence from us. Come and see us over at the VFA stand, and we'd love to give you one of those. The gala dinner and awards ceremony is on tomorrow night, and it's called A Night at the Museum. It's at the Melbourne Museum. You should have received some information in your email about this and a little box to tick if you're taking the bus. If you haven't done that, just make sure you see us at the registration desk so we know how many buses, and they will take everyone from here over to the museum and drop us back here later on for wherever else we get out to. If you have any questions during the event or you need any assistance, just come and see any of us in the white polos. If you want to know where the best coffee or food is, we'd love to point you in the right direction. Or come and see us at the registration desk. We want to make sure you have a fabulous time when you're here in the best city in the world, Melbourne, as Perry said. So that's enough housekeeping for now. I think we can get on with it and introduce our first keynote speaker, who is Steve Moyer. So Steve serves as the Vice President for Government Affairs at Trout Unlimited. And for those of you who don't know, Trout Unlimited is the premier advocacy group in the world, I think. They are a non-profit organisation dedicated to conserving, protecting and restoring trout and salmon fisheries, which of course are a native species in the US. Trout Unlimited has an amazing 300,000 members and 380 chapters across the US. So they're an enormous organisation. Steve works with Trout Unlimited's local chapters with their advocacy efforts and campaigns, and he's been in this field since 1980. So he's got a wealth of knowledge. His keynote presentation focuses on stewardship in recreational fisheries. Please join with me in welcoming Steve.
Did you take the clicker? Just, oh, right here. This one. That one. Okay, thank you. Well, thank you so much for having me and inviting me to this event. Trout Unlimited is just truly privileged and honored to be with you all. And just having been here for a day now or so, you all have been so welcoming to me and so generous in spirit to treating me like one of your own. And that's really very much how I feel. And so one of the themes of my talk is that TUI and the United States has been very blessed and just has received tremendous benefits from our fisheries and fishing, and we feel really honored and blessed to have that. But wow, we have a big job, a big mountain yet to climb to really get to where we want to be. So maybe a little different than the keynotes you might have heard, where you're going to hear 100% good things that are happening that we're going to claim responsibility for. We'll have plenty of that, but we're going to also talk about the challenges that remain before us. And a little bit about what we've learned and how it's affected what we've accomplished and what we're trying to accomplish together. So I hope you all have in life one of those moments where you say, how in the world did I possibly get here? So when we were invited to this meeting, I had one of those. But here's how I possibly got here, and it goes to the abundant blessings which I've received. My mother-in-law was Miss Victoria in 1947, and I married her daughter. And it was just the best decision that I ever made, but of course it really wasn't my decision, it was her decision to make this happen. So I've spent 42 years in our business, and I've done some pretty good things, but when Australia calls, I'm going to be responding affirmatively to do whatever Australia needs me to do because of my background and connection to Australia and to Victoria. So just in case I messed up this talk, I had a 1-minute video that's going to explain everything, all right? So you can take that away from this. But here's what Trout Unlimited is and tries to be.
We are here to do a positive change for our communities. By protecting public lands, we receive public improvements in our rivers, places that we want to talk about. In reconnecting these places, we are keeping water in our streams, making lots of floodlands, thereby lessening the impact of drought and flooding. By restoring degraded streams, we are removing toxic chemicals from our water supplies and providing usable habitat to fish and wildlife populations. Our science-based approach provides foundation and innovation to our conservation efforts throughout the country. We are the ones who show up again and again in state capitals, in planning meetings, at schools, and community events. By making our communities more connected to their rivers and to one another, we are working toward a better, safer, cleaner future. Through outreach to youth and veterans, we are passing along the wonder, healing, and peace that come with the power of water. From the headwaters to the sea, we are not daunted by the challenges we face. Quite the opposite, in fact. Trout Unlimited is here to serve. We are here to get things done.
Oh. It's so nice of you to clap. Maybe I should stop right there, but I've got a few more things to say. Craig Copeland gave me advice about what to talk about, and I'm going to give you another layer too about Trout Unlimited. And these are 3 clips that came about, some of the press coverage that started way back in the beginning. 1959, 16 fellows who looked all too much like me, probably in their 60s, started a club in Michigan because they were unhappy about how the state that was managing their fisheries at that time was doing what they thought was putting too much emphasis on stocking and not enough emphasis on conserving native trout and habitat. You know, habitat was really part of the equation back then. It was about managing fisheries. So this little group of old guys got together, started TU in 1959. And since then, we've grown and changed a lot, and I'll just run through some of that. We have about 300,000 members and supporters across the country of the United States. Our staff is now about 280 people, again, spread across the country where the work's being done. We are organized into state councils so that we can advocate and work with the states, legislatures, and the state agencies. So we have 36 state councils, about 400 chapters. These are local chapters of all sizes, from a couple of dozen people all the way up to a couple of thousand across the country who are working at the local level on conservation. And our budget right now is about $77 million, which is good, as I'm going to tell you. It's a blessing and it's a challenge because we have to keep up with the growth that we've had, and it's not easy to keep up with that growth. But when I started, we were at $4 million in 1992, and we were of the 4 million, we were $700,000 in debt. I will never forget where we started, the very humble beginning. So we've grown a lot, and hopefully we are making significant contributions to fishing and fisheries in the United States. So I wanted to get one slide that would capture that, and each year we ask all our 280 staff to tell us what they've done in the past year, and 2021 was our last year. So we think about things in terms of what lands and waters we've protected, what waters we've restored, and then our middle objective is to connect those lands that are protected with restored waters. And so this verb reconnected is becoming such a very big, important thing in the United States. And that is the thing that is as small as just fixing a culvert that's blown out that won't allow fish to pass up and down a watershed, but all the way up to significant dam removals of obsolete dams that are in the way of fisheries movement. So that's the reconnected verb, which has become really important in the United States. So here's where I want to talk, so all that's pretty good, and I hope you like the video. I hope you have a positive thought about us at this point, but I also wanted to talk about our challenges, as I said at the beginning. So complicated slides, so just look at the yellow highlight. When we look at all the people who are fly fishers in the United States, we probably have about 7 million of those, and Trout Unlimited has 136,000 members, but as Taylor said, and as I said, we count members and supporters, and we have about 300,000. So we're still getting just a very small amount of the total people who you would think would be likely to be our members. So we just have a big engagement job, and I'm going to talk about that a bit more. In fact, we're not doing as well as some of our brothers and sister groups in the United States. And then probably biggest of all is the habitat and resource challenges we face. Of course, a group that likes trout is going to be a little bit worried about climate change and warming waters because it's not going to work for our species down the road. So we're really in a race against time to do the things that we can do to make our watersheds, our catchments more resilient for trout and salmon so that they'll survive. And then also, of course, deal with climate change at its root cause and lowering the emissions that go into the air and cause climate change in the first place. But just on the left there, you'll see all that blue are basins, catchments where threatened or endangered trout and salmon live. So just vast areas of, especially the American West, where we have trout and salmon that are endangered because of habitat loss and now increasingly because of climate change. You probably heard about the state of California, which gets a lot of acclaim for a lot of things. It's probably the center of the universe for all the bad things that climate change causes. Drought, fires, heat, just an incredible cauldron of bad things happening. But even there, as you know, fish are resilient. We're trying to keep trout and salmon thriving and being sustainable over time and facing up to the great challenge that we have. So as we're facing up to these challenges, we did a new planning cycle, and we got away a little bit from words like protected and restoration, and we want to use more words like communities, like engagement, diverse interests and caring for those who are interested in trout and salmon, who are going to be the conservationists that will follow us. So these are our two statements now of our mission and vision, which really are a break from the past and the use of older words like restoration or protection. A word about engagement. How are we going to replace the 65-year-old old guys like me? A huge and pressing question. How do we get young people interested in our work into fishing? So Trout Unlimited tries lots of things. We teach people how to fish. We take them out to where the magic happens, to the waterways, to teach them how to fish. Fly tying, which seems like a simple thing, has been really a popular way of introducing people to the sport that I would have never thought would have been a good idea, but it turns out it is. People love to tie flies. So we're doing a whole range of things. But what we've really found is, maybe the best magic of all is getting kids and people, their parents, out to a restoration project and really seeing the magic that happens when you restore a degraded habitat back to at least a portion of what it used to be. So we're really moving more towards experiential engagement and away from what we used to do, which would be to have a whole bunch of old guys get together at a meeting site and talk about boring things which might seem interesting to the old guys, but not so interesting to the young people. So that is the approach that we're going to work more on. One of the things we've learned over time is to be united. We have chapters, councils, national staff. We've got to get people on the same page. And then we've got to work with our partners of all shapes, all persuasions, to be on the same page. And when we do that, we can do unbelievable things. One of the best things that we've done over the last couple of years is save Bristol Bay. We're not done yet, but we've made huge strides there. Bristol Bay is a series of catchments in Alaska where 50 to 60 million adult salmon come back to spawn each year. Just an unbelievable, one of the world's most unbelievable resources, and it was threatened by a very poorly planned mining project, and we spent 15 years working with our partners, working with indigenous people who were there and did such a great job to really persuade the government to not go ahead with that mine. We've got to be resourceful. We've learned we have to be resourceful. We have to find pragmatic, lasting solutions. It's a very divided United States of America. I'm sure you've heard of that. It's tough to figure out where the compromise is that is practical, where both sides can take away something that will last over time. And I think we've done that pretty successfully, but of course, it's a lifelong activity to pursue. So I just want to touch on a couple of these. I'm not sure how many of you have heard of the Penobscot River in Maine. I went to school in the University of Maine, and this was right near our campus. And TU and its partners did an amazing thing there, working with the state government, working with the federal agencies, working with the indigenous tribe there. It's a little complicated, but what we did was that over time, in all the brown are the activities that we did for the fish starting at the bottom. We removed a couple of dams, we bypassed a third. So really 3 dams that were taken out in the river. And then on the other side, in the green, are all the things that we did for energy. We made tweaks to existing dams so that they could increase production of energy that made up for the loss of the dams being removed. So just an unbelievably cool restoration program where we removed these dams, opened up 1,000 miles of habitat for trout and salmon that couldn't be reached, and we replaced all the energy that was lost by the dam removal. We have another big project that's following on the Penobscot and the Klamath Basin. This is a really great basin in California and Oregon on our west coast. There we're going to remove 4 dams. That'll be the next big dam removal project in the United States. And again, a tremendous amount of work by partners in the state and federal governments. And we're just now entering into the beginning of actually moving forward with those 4 dam removals on the Klamath. Science guides everything we do, as it very much should. So we have 10 science staff now that are working with our conservation staff to do the work. And I wanted to make sure you technical people got a little dose of the new technical things. We have a drone fleet for old guys like me. Whoever thought that we'd have a drone fleet to do the science work that we have, but we do. We have people who are certified how to use them so they don't get in the way of our commercial airline traffic and can do the good work on the ground. But really, I just wanted to try to get a slide, and we do so much on the science that half of my slide was cut off, which is my fault. But we do everything from supporting our conservation work and doing the monitoring. We do the reports, like the State of the Trout, which talk about the state of the various trout species in the United States. And then up in the right-hand corner, it was intended to be a good example of the peer-reviewed publications that our scientists do. Collaboration and partnership. You've already heard so much about that in the previous speakers, and I just loved every bit about the words partnership and collaboration that we have. There's absolutely no way that everything that I've talked about so far that could have been done without these amazing partnerships and collaborative work with our partners. It has just led to some amazing things, and it couldn't have happened unless it was done in sync with our partners, where each of the partners was getting a good return on the investment of the energy that they have put into the work. Just one of the most, touching back on the unbelievably positive things that have happened, more than we ever expected. the United States passed 2 infrastructure laws in the last few years. And TU and others of our partners were advocates for the passage of these laws. Passing a law in the United States, even as a little tiny one, is hugely difficult to do because of the divisiveness we have in the country. But amazingly, and I won't bore you with the long stories, but we passed 2 laws in close succession which provided more resources for our work than we would have ever, more than we ever asked for. And that never happens in our part of the world. You get more than you ask for. It happened here, and it happened because of the partnerships, collaboration that we have. People love these kinds of projects, and there's great political support for them. So our infrastructure work that's happened there, people often think of infrastructure in terms of trains and roads and bridges. All that got most of the money, but what happened this time through the partnerships and the advocacy was that natural solutions or green infrastructure got a lot of money to do the work that we do. And here's a list of our friends, the various federal agencies. We have quite a few federal agencies that do the resource work. NOAA is one in particular. That's our Oceanographic Fisheries Service, Fish and Wildlife Service, Forest Service. All of these agencies got much more money than they had through the infrastructure laws to do the natural infrastructure work. And this little modest slide is really one of my favorites. We had to convince Congress about what green infrastructure and natural infrastructure was. Here's your green infrastructure, right? This idea that watersheds and catchments, when they're healthy and working, can do the job of culverts and bridges and a lot of other hard infrastructure just as well and for cheaper. So in this catchment, we are working with the state of Wyoming and the Bureau of Land Management to really improve upper watersheds that are up higher in a river basin, to hold the water up higher and release it slower, really save the water. And as you can see, what we're doing is making that watershed better for trout, but it's also making the water management better for the cities and towns down below by ensuring that there's more water that comes down more certainly. And one thing you wouldn't think of in that dry climate, this restored watershed is really a good fire break in a landscape and communities where fire is a big issue and can be really harmful. If you restore watersheds, you have a natural fire break that you wouldn't have had if you didn't do it. Through the infrastructure laws, we got a good partnership agreement with Forest Service. We have $40 million to work with them now for the next 5 years, where we can do all sorts of good restoration work across our national forests, which are where a lot of our trout and salmon are. I wanted to focus a little bit on the gentleman on the left, and not to name his name, just to say that one of the keys to our success has been able to hire people from local communities who really know local communities and all the interests and all the relationships there. And they serve as the catalyst for doing the projects, bringing the money together, bringing the agencies together, working with landowners to get projects done. NOAA Fisheries is one of our biggest partners, and I just wanted to put this up to show you, within this one agency, it got 3 slugs of money over there on the left for various programs, and then it has an even bigger slug of money for broader coastal restoration work. So just an example of one of our partnership agencies who, through these laws, got a once in a generation opportunity to do good work through the partnerships and through the infrastructure laws that were passed. And I'll leave you with being hopeful. I hope I was hopeful today. We do have these huge issues to face. No bigger than a climate change, global warming problem for a cold water species. What could be possibly bigger than that? But also the engagement and replacing old people like me who are not going to be working much longer. Huge challenges that we have to do well at. But I just feel this incredible sense of hope. Being with you this morning, I feel the same thing. You Australians are just so hopeful and happy, it seems to me. I'm just shocked. Are you happy all the time, or is it just every once in a while when you have a big conference? No, I really am pleased to be with you and to be hopeful with you, just to leave you with this incredible project in central Washington state that you may not have heard about. The Yakima Basin, central Washington, it's just an incredible place where you have fish, where you have farmers growing hops, alfalfa, apples, just the whole array of agriculture and fisheries all in this one magical place. But like I'm talking about, it has all sorts of problems. How do you manage for all these different things with a very limited source of water? Well, we fought about it for years. We really did, and we got over it. And we faced up to our problems, and we got good partnerships. We developed a plan, and it has those objectives: to get water for irrigators and farmers, to get fish for the fishers, as well as the towns and the cities in that basin. That's a little bit of a complicated slide, but just for you technos, again, we're going to do all sorts of different water management projects there on the left. There are about 6 different kinds of projects that we're going to do across the basin. It's a long-term plan. It's an expensive plan, $4 billion. But we're going to do it together. We're going to raise that money. We're going to do those activities together in the Yakima Basin. And at last, that's me on the left. And I really was happier than that face looks. But my point was that this fellow on the right, Urban Eberhardt, is the irrigation manager for that whole basin. He's the one that is making it possible. All the money that we have, all the science that we have, wouldn't matter a thing in the Yakima, wouldn't matter in a lot of places if we didn't have a partner who was really willing to work with us. That guy controls the water in the Yakima Basin. You've got to get along with him. You've got to do well with him. He has been a fantastic partner. And the reason I put this picture in, even though the grumpy face, was that little creek behind there wouldn't have water in it at that time of the year if it wasn't for Urban and his farmers making a deal with us to allow that water to be in there at that time of the year, which is a critical thing for salmon and trout in that basin. And I'll just, end by repeating what I've said. I've just been so blessed and so happy to get the benefits of a career in fisheries conservation. That is me in New Hampshire catching what, for you cod people, looks like a small fish. I was very happy to have it. It was a beautiful setting. I was fishing with my son-in-law. What a wonderful thing to have a son-in-law who you love, who has a boat, who will take you fishing on a beautiful evening. And suddenly the fish are rising and you're catching fish on every cast. Doesn't happen very often for me. Maybe it happens more for you. But, we've just gotten so many good things that have enabled us to take care of opportunities, but we have big things left to do. I really think our best days ahead of us. And we're going to need a lot of those good days ahead of us to take care of the challenges that we face. But I just want to say thank you so much for having me. So pleased to be in Australia with you. And I'll try to make myself useful here for the next couple days. But again, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Steve. Wonderful presentation, really inspiring. Lots of learnings for a lot of our advocacy efforts here, and I like the bit at the end, your best friend's the friend who's got a boat. That's the best part. We'll move on now to our next keynote speaker is Sascha Clark Danylchuk. Sascha is the Executive Director of Keep Fish Wet, a US-based non-profit organisation dedicated to helping anglers improve the outcome for each fish they release. Sascha has a Master's in Aquatic Ecology from the University of Illinois and has focused much of her scientific work on recreational angling, specifically the science of catch and release. Sascha's presentation is titled How to Build a Bridge, Lessons Learned from Working to Enhance Knowledge Exchange Between Fisheries Scientists and Recreational Anglers. Please welcome Sascha.
Good morning. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we gather today and pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. Steve talked a lot about this, but too many of our most beloved fisheries face myriad threats. And while the suite of threats that are faced by each fishery are unique, there's a lot of commonalities between those individual threats. Things like habitat loss or pollution. There are two threats that are fairly universal. Certainly climate change at this point is affecting almost all of our fisheries in one form or another. And this huge threat is something that's going to take the global community decades to change and to solve. The impacts that catch and release also affect almost all of our fisheries, but it's a very, very different type of threat. It's unique because we already have the solution. Anglers are a double-edged sword. We are loving our fisheries to death, and in a lot of places, we're seeing declines just from catch and release. When it comes to the impacts that catch and release, anglers are the problem. But on the other side, without fishers, we wouldn't be able to tackle a lot of the other big problems facing our recreational fisheries. And for catch and release, anglers are also the only solution. My organization works on catch and release and the best practices for recreational angling. And we see 4 imperatives for addressing the impacts from catch and release. First of all, ecologically, in the US where I'm from, we estimate that about 200 million fish die every year from catch and release. That's more fish, I believe, than are caught totally in the Australian recreational fishing sector. And that doesn't include things like sublethal impacts from catch and release. Economically, in the US, those 200 million fish are worth about $2.5 billion. And again, that's not counting things like hatchery costs and management. Socially, smartphones have fundamentally changed the way that we interact with fish. There are more anglers taking more pictures of more fish than ever before. And anglers learn from each other. We have anglers copying each other, copying the style of photos that are used on social media, hence things like the grip and grin and the hero shot. Now, when it comes to the science on catch and release, we have over 400 studies that have been done, mostly in the last several decades, even though catch and release has been used as a management and conservation tool for much, much longer than that. Now, we absolutely have more work that needs to be done on catch and release, and we're going to hear some great presentations here over the next few days about some of that work. But we have enough science to definitively say that using best practices leads to more fish surviving and in better health after release. So we've defined the problem. We have solutions in place. We've talked about the ecological or the imperatives. Why is this still an issue? Why is this still a problem? Well, it's because we're talking about dealing with people, not just fish. We have fishery scientists on one side of a river, and we have anglers on the other side. And we have a giant knowledge action gap in between them. We don't communicate very well at all. We publish our science, and it's locked away, literally locked away, in journals that anglers can't access. That information is not available to anglers. So in order to facilitate pro-environmental behavior and change social norms, we need to make that information available. We need to work on how we communicate with recreational anglers. If we don't communicate with recreational anglers, they will come up with their own best practices, anecdotal best practices, ideas that they learn over a lifetime of fishing. And some of those best practices are great. Anglers have been telling each other for decades to make sure to get your hands wet before you handle fish. That's fantastic. Some of the other best practices that they come up with are potentially a little bit more questionable. These are 3 best practices that are very popular in recreational angling in the United States. The first one, if your fish is bleeding from the gills, you should pour Coca-Cola down its throat or over its gills, and that will stop the bleeding. The second one is that milkfish can fight for so long because they don't accumulate blood lactate or lactic acid, and that's because they're vegetarians. And the last one is that the best way to release small tuna and jacks is by forcefully throwing them headfirst back into the water, because that gets more water moving over their gills and helps revive them. So the first two we've actually done some science on, and obviously these theories have been proved very wrong, not a best practice by any means. But these are the kind of ideas that anglers come up with. And again, like, not all their best practices are wrong, but we need to be providing some science-based information for anglers because they want to care for fish. Regardless of what information we provide for them, they will come up with their own theories. So when we're talking to anglers and working with anglers, how do we communicate the science? How do we get some of these more science-based best practices and messages across to them? Well, first of all, words really matter. And both the words that you choose to use and the words that you avoid. In my organization, we don't use terms like proper catch and release, because that implies that if you don't do things our way, you're doing them improperly. And nobody likes to be told they're doing things improperly. We're careful about the terms we use and make sure they're inclusive. We don't use fishermen, we use fishers or anglers. We talk about what anglers should be doing. We show them what they should be doing, as opposed to talking what they shouldn't be doing. There's a lot of work that's been done on praise versus sanctions and changing social norms. And we find that using praise, talking about the good examples, is much more significant in changing behavior than telling people when they're doing things wrong. Really importantly, we try to eliminate all scientific and policy jargon. That's the fastest way to lose anglers if you're using a bunch of science jargon. And yes, it is still possible to discuss nuanced scientific principles or facts, theories, without using a lot of scientific jargon. You just have to be more careful about the words you're choosing and thinking about how to present that information. The other thing that's really important when we're communicating with anglers is that pictures are powerful. Using images, videos, illustrations, drawings, whatever it is to communicate your ideas makes a world of difference when we're talking to anglers. It gets at differences in learning styles. It also helps to communicate ideas in multiple ways. And this is why things like social media platforms like Facebook and Instagram are so powerful tools for changing ideas, is because there's pictures associated. But really, really important, two caveats about using pictures is if you set standards, you have to follow them, and you have to make sure your imagery does as well. We've seen examples of people advocating for best practices and then sharing pictures that don't match those best practices, and that's the fastest way to lose the respect of anglers and to confuse the messaging. And in this day and age, as scientists, with all the platforms available to us, all the ways to communicate ideas, there's no excuse to have figures that aren't readable. If you can't get your figure and talk about the ideas and get those across in 30 seconds, you've lost 90% of your audience already. So making sure that that information is clear and understandable for anglers is really important. So those are some things that we can do from the fishery science side of the river, trying to get our ideas, increase our communication. But we also need to think about how do we help build the bridge from the other side as well? How do we help enable communication from anglers to scientists? And there's a couple things that we can do. One is just create opportunities for that sort of information exchange. This is a picture from my favorite activity that I do every year. I participate in a program called Guiding for the Future, and it's an advanced conservation certification for guides. And even though I'm there in a teaching capacity to talk about fish biology and ecology and fish handling, I spend 3 days with 25 guides from all over. This one was in Montana. And I learn more from them in those 3 days than they do from me. It's an opportunity to have formal and informal conversations with guides about what they're seeing on the water. These are people who are out there, on the days on, but also often go fishing on their days off as well. And so they're some of the first people to notice changes in their habitats and ecosystems. They're a great resource for understanding what's going on. The other thing that we really try to do is put some faces behind the science. Instead of talking about this study or that study, at least naming the authors to begin with. Talk about the people that are doing this. Many of the people, we are fishery scientists, managers, but also we're recreational fishers as well. So putting a face to those names. We have fishing ambassadors. We also have science ambassadors. We want to talk about the people who are doing this work and literally put a face to them, but facilitate communication through putting a name and a face to the work. The other thing that's been very, very successful for us is something we call angler-driven science. And even though my organization doesn't do science, doesn't do the scientific studies, we're involved in a lot of communication and outreach of scientific studies. And my partner, AUD Danylchuk, will be speaking about this a little bit more this morning, but very basically, it's using questions from anglers or guides for the foundation for some scientific studies. And then we try to find ways to also include those anglers in the process, in the work. It's a little different than citizen science in that way, but it's been really, really effective for addressing issues that anglers and guides have. There was a study that was done on steelhead up on the Bulkley, and part of it was just trying to figure out what's the best way to land fish. And Andy is going to talk about that a little bit more, so I won't give away his presentation. But these things have been really successful for us for kind of helping to build that bridge from the other side, even if we're standing on the scientist side of the river. The last thing that has been key for us and is really important is having a consistent and persistent message. Steve talked about building partnerships, building collaborations, and consistent and persistent messaging is really important in those settings. We find it important for multiple groups working together, and there needs to be more of that for sure. And we also find it important within our own organization. Sometimes we feel like a broken record, but we need to keep talking about the same information to get it out to as many people as possible. So this quote from Branscombe et al. Is one that we use a lot. It defines both the problem and the solution for the impacts of catch and release. And a lot of anglers actually find this inspiring. The fact that this is an issue that they can solve, that with each fish they catch, they can be a part of the solution, they can put conservation into action, is really important for them. And this is a unique issue, as I said. We have a lot of the solutions already in place for impacts from catch and release. but we also see the challenges with building this bridge and the opportunities. This is a path forward for us to talk about more of these issues, to bring anglers along, to increase scientific literacy, and to help mobilize stakeholders to address a lot of the other issues facing our fish and fisheries. Thank you.
Thank you, Sascha. Wonderful talk. And I love the strategy around getting those messages just to carefully influence behaviour. A lot for us to learn from. I'm sure lots of you have lots of questions for both Sascha and Steve. We might save those until morning tea because we're going to have a little break in a sec. But could we have another round of applause for our fabulous keynotes, Steve and Sascha, please? So that brings us to morning tea. Fantastic first session. We'll now serve coffee and tea and refreshments and snacks out here in the foyer. The sessions will start at 10:30, so we've got about a 20-minute break. Remember, if you've got any questions from anyone, come and see us in the white polos and enjoy the rest of the day.